Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Walz is finished. Congress held a hearing regarding the Somali fraud scandal in Minnesota, and witnesses included actual Minnesota state officials who testified that Tim Walz 100% knew about the fraud because they had been sounding the alarm for years, but were ultimately coerced and threatened to remain silent and ignore the blatant fraud. By the end of this hearing, the evidence that Tim Walz is guilty is so overwhelming that Congress moves to have criminal charges brought against him. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel, but let's start with a lovely Somali man at a city council meeting threatening Democrats to stop investigating their fraud or else they will stop voting Democrat.
My name is Mohammed. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Somali community in Lewiston. Some of you sitting here today, we voted for you. We elected you to protect our community interests, not creating division or go after one elected member from our community. This narrative, if this narrative continues, our community will be forced to re-examine our relationship or political relationship, including our relationship with the Democratic Party and who will be voting in the future.
He just exposed the entire illegal arrangement between the Democrat Party and the Somali community. You vote for policies and programs that allow us to enrich ourselves, and we repay you with votes and kickbacks disguised as campaign contributions. Most liberals, while they're proudly advocating for mass third world migration, have no idea how tribalistic third world politics are. Somalia is so dysfunctional because it's just a bunch of clan feudalism. Everybody tearing the country apart, trying to get the most that they can to benefit their own tribe. And the reason we're seeing such polarization and destabilization here in America is because Democrats are playing the exact same game with identity politics. This extreme third world tribalism is how the Somali fraud in Minnesota got so big and lasted for so long. Because if any honest member of the Somali community came forward and exposed the fraud that was happening, they would be immediately exiled from the tribe. And because they're completely unassimilated in American society because Democrats told them assimilation is racist, being a part of the tribe is a matter of survival. That's why the white as mayonnaise mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, gives all of his public remarks in Somali now. Because the Somali voting bloc gave him a choice: adhere to our demands or we will install one of our own. And as Ilhan Omar frequently and unapologetically states, her interests are the interests of Somalia. And that is the same for the entire Somali community. That's why over 90% of the people charged in this welfare scandal so far have been Somali. Not because white people couldn't have done it, or Asian people, or Hispanic people, or black people couldn't have done it, but because Somalis were the only ones who were so indifferent to robbing a program meant to benefit American children for their own benefit. But before we go into the hearing, let's hear from Congressman Byron Donalds, who recapped the hearing by saying Tim Walz is 100% guilty.
Back in Washington, just left the oversight hearing on Minnesota. I mean, this thing is crazy. You have the governor and his team going after whistleblowers, state employees trying to do the right thing in Minnesota to explain the fraud that was happening, to get it under control. And it looks like Governor Walz, the Lieutenant Governor, the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, not only did they know about it, they were trying to protect the fraud to continue. These fraudsters were donating campaign cash to the governor and the Attorney General. The whistleblowers who were coming forward were threatened. Their jobs were threatened. Their careers were threatened. And then we find out that the fraudsters were buying property in Kenya and Turkey, sending money back to Somalia. The money going back to Somalia could potentially have fallen into the hands of Al-Shabaab, the Al-Qaeda affiliates in Somalia. Absolute crazy stuff.
But at this congressional hearing, Congressman Brandon Gill makes himself famous by confronting the one Somali-loving, self-hating white guy witness with the true, brutal statistics of the Somali problem in Minnesota.
Let me ask you, does large-scale Somali immigration make Minnesota stronger or weaker?
Certainly stronger.
Certainly stronger. Do you know what percentage of Somali-headed households in Minnesota are on food stamps?
No.
54%. Do you know what that number is for native Minnesota-headed households?
Well, to be clear, a majority of the
It's 7%. There's a big difference between 54% and 7%, is there not?
Excuse me, sir. Could I answer the question?
Let me move on. We've got a lot of questions here. What percentage of Somali-headed households in Minnesota are on Medicaid?
I don't know.
It's 73%. Do you know what that number is for Minnesota native households?
Again, you're using the phrase Minnesota native households, but the majority.
The number is 18%. That's quite an astounding difference. I think we would agree.
Can I answer the question, please?
Let me ask you one more, and then we can go on to that. What percentage of Somali-headed households are on welfare in general?
I don't know.
It's 81%. What about, let me just ask you, after 10 years of being in the United States, what percentage of Somali immigrant households continue to be on welfare?
I don't know.
The number is 78%.
So for all the third world mass migration loving liberals who believe that arbitrarily bringing in non-white people makes our country better because of diversity, how can you explain the economic and cultural benefit of them not assimilating into American society and preserving their barbaric, backward, primitive culture, while also overwhelmingly needing to be on government welfare just to survive? Our system and our culture cannot sustain itself the moment American citizens feel like them being hardworking, self-sufficient, contributing members of society makes them a sucker, makes them an idiot who is living a lower quality of life than a Somali immigrant who's electing not to work, who has 4 or 5 children to maximize the amount of welfare they receive, and then set up a home daycare center so they can bill the government to watch their own children. Why would liberals expect people who can't set up the most basic form of government and accept incest as part of their culture to culturally enrich the United States and be productive, contributing members of society? It's almost like they're telling us we should be happy to have our tax dollars robbed by Somalis. That's just the cost of diversity. But Brandon Gill questions the other witnesses on the panel, and this is where they reveal just how complicit Tim Walz was.
Of working age Somalians who have been in the U.S. for 10 years or more, how many of them speak English very well?
I don't know.
About half. The answer is about half. That seems pretty low, doesn't it?
Again, I keep trying
It
to
doesn't sound like something that makes our country stronger to me, and I think most Americans would agree with me on that. I need to move on. Ms. Robbins, when would you say we concretely knew that widespread welfare fraud was occurring in Minnesota?
There have been reports since 2009 from the Office of Legislative Auditor. I would say the credible reports on childcare fraud started surfacing 2011 to 2013.
So for over a decade.
Yes, sir.
When do you think Governor Walz knew about this fraud?
From the very beginning. He was running for governor in 2018 when there were prosecutions going on, when there was an OLA report, active cases in the news all the time.
And what was the Walz administration's response?
They actually did nothing when they got into office, and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan had been on the committee in the legislature that had hearings on childcare fraud, and when they got into office, they did put $5 million into a little more money, but nothing changed.
But nothing. And let me ask you, Mr. Hudson, thank you for being here. Did those who commit this fraud, do they typically vote for Republicans or Democrats, in your opinion?
In my opinion, thank you for qualifying like that, I would say they most definitely overwhelmingly vote for Democrats.
Do they typically donate to Republicans or Democrats?
Not to my knowledge. They
In your
don't
opinion?
donate to Republicans, they donate to Democrats, in my opinion, yes.
Got it. So would you say this is the Somali population is an important demographic for Democrats to win over politically?
Unquestionably.
Got it. And do you think it would have hurt Democrats' political standing with the Somali population to investigate this fraud?
Very clearly.
Got it. So in other words, you're saying that there was a political incentive to cover up widespread Somali fraud. Is that right?
100%.
Got it. Let me ask all three of you. Did the Walz administration and Democrats intentionally, in your opinion, overlook this fraud while it was happening for political gain? I'll start with you, Ms. Robbins.
Absolutely. We have credible whistleblower reports that the Department of Human Services administration up to the OIG and the commissioner met with a group called the Minnesota Minority Child Care Association multiple times, and that they were trying to weaken protections. We wanted, we had several changes we wanted to do, and they opposed all of them.
And Mr. Hudson and Ms. Rarick, and then my time is up.
I would agree.
Absolutely. The whistleblowers confirm it.
Got it. Thank you.
Once again, the Democrats are exposing the racism behind their politics of compassion. They're opposed to merit-based immigration because that would bring in too many white and Asian people. And these people won't vote Democrat because they're not enticed by low-quality free services that the Democrats offer. So they changed immigration policy to something that appears to be more humanitarian on the surface. More refugees, more asylum seekers, more people from the most destabilized countries on earth. Because then they can publicly celebrate helping out people in need. But behind the scenes, their intention was to bring in the people who were most likely to be lifelong government welfare dependents and therefore vote Democrat. And then they allowed mass illegal Hispanic migration because in their worldview, these brown Hispanic people are perfectly suited to pick crops. Their goal was to bring in people whose lives were so bad that a lifetime on the government dole in comparison was like living in luxury. And as we saw in the first clip, the Somali man was offended at merely an investigation being opened. He didn't even say, we're in support of an investigation into fraud because we're all innocent and anybody who's committing fraud is not representative of the Somali community. He said, don't look into fraud at all or Somalis are going to stop voting for you. And that's why at the end of this hearing, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna says, we've heard enough. Time to file charges against Tim Walz.
Honorable Robbins, based on your record before your committee, when did Governor Walz first become aware of widespread fraud in Minnesota social service programs?
I would assume that he has been aware of it since he ran for office for governor in 2018.
By 2017, DHS investigators warned CCAP fraud could exceed 50%. What was that information elevated to the governor's office?
Yes, there was an OLA report.
Thank you, ma'am. By 2020, state officials knew Feeding Our Future invoices were fraudulent. We know that payments continued to the AG's knowledge. Did they continue to the governor's knowledge as well?
Yes.
Attorney General Ellison agreed on tape to fight Minnesota's own Department of Human and Health Services in exchange for Somali political and financial support. In your personal opinion, do you believe it is a possibility that Governor Walz also made that personal deal or that he at least knew about the Attorney General's agreement?
I don't know.
Okay. I don't want to rehash what you guys have spent hours answering. We know that there's a big issue with the fraud in Minnesota. So on a number of things, I'd first like to point out, thank you for being here today, but because of your testimony and because of some of the evidence that we've seen brought forward, as well as I'm sure the fact that this committee, I assume, at Chairman Comer's direction will be soon subpoenaing AG Ellison, I would like to make criminal referrals regarding Governor Walz as well as AG Ellison. As you know, U.S. Code 371 and U.S. Code 2, which deals with criminalized conspiracies to defraud the United States and establishes liability for individuals who knowingly aid or abet the commission of federal offense, includes willful blindness or deliberate inaction where duties to act exist. So I will be referring them later on today.
So this coincides with the Department of Justice already opening a criminal investigation into Tim Walz. This is why he dropped out of the race for governor, not because the fraud got exposed. Minnesota is clearly filled with too many self-hating white liberals to care about the fraud. That's just a small price to pay for their diversity utopia. He dropped out of the race because he knows he is going to jail. And if the Democrat candidate for governor ended up going to jail, that would essentially just hand over the win to the Republicans. But the last thing I'm going to show you is despite everything that's come out, all the evidence, all the proof, Zohran Mamdani also wants to get in on the fraud and announced that universal child care is coming to New York City with an emphasis on home care providers, the same thing that the Somalis took advantage of in Minnesota.
Not only when we make pre-K truly universal, but expand this care to include all 2- and 3-year-olds across the city. As the governor said, we will deliver to care by working in partnership with childcare providers, especially home-based providers who have been doing this work without thanks or recognition for far too.
I don't think Democrats understand that most people, even I'm sure most right-leaning people, would be in favor of things like universal childcare if we knew that the money was actually going to be spent effectively and would benefit Americans and not be defrauded by Somali pirates. People only support robust social programs in high-trust societies where they feel as if the next man isn't going to take advantage of their generosity. But when they see what happens in Minnesota and the politicians subsequently showing no concern at all, people become less supportive of social programs because they simply don't trust them. But in the case of anti-American agent of chaos Zoran Mamdani, I think he wants the fraud to happen. He sees it as a morally just redistribution of wealth from the billionaire class to the working class. And he gets to dress it up in a pretty veneer of helping out working families with children. But with all the billions being pumped into free childcare in New York City, Minnesota might be freed from the grip of Somali tyranny because all the Somalis are probably just gonna now move to New York. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Turn on those notification bells so you never miss a video. And I will see you guys in the next one.